And for a moment there, everybody on that ship.
That reaction, right there, is what it looks like to see something the ocean hadn't produced in millions of years. For 13 million years, nothing in the ocean dared challenge a fully grown megalodon. Then something surfaced that Megalodon had never faced before. An animal its own size, armed with the largest biting teeth any predator has ever grown. This is the only predator that ever made Megalodon meet its match, and it wasn't a bigger shark or a faster hunter, but a whale, competing tooth for tooth against Megalodon for a food supply that was already running out on both of them. To understand how that rivalry was even possible, it helps to start with the animal everyone already thinks they know, because most of what people picture when they hear its name is wrong. What Megalodon actually was. Picture the ocean roughly 20 million years ago, long before anything resembling a human eye ever looked out across open water. Somewhere beneath the waves swims an animal that will eventually earn a name, meaning simply big tooth. Otodus megalodon.
Huge shark that existed from about 23 million years ago to about 3.5 million years ago.
Its existence wasn't brief either. It lived a genuinely long run, roughly from 23 million years ago down to about 3.6 million years ago, spanning what geologists call the early Miocene and early Pliocene, two named chapters of Earth's geological timeline. That's a stretch of time so vast it makes almost every predator most people can name look like a footnote by comparison. Here's the detail most people get wrong before they even start. Picture a great white shark, then imagine scaling it up to a monstrous size, and you'd already be picturing the wrong animal. Megalodon isn't a supersized great white at all. It belongs to a completely different extinct family called Otodontides. That family split off from the great white's own branch of the shark family tree all the way back in the early Cretaceous, a period roughly 145 to 100 million years ago, tens of millions of years before Megalodon itself even existed. Even the basic question of how big it actually got comes with genuine scientific disagreement rather than one clean answer. Scientists estimate that most Megalodon individuals across every stage of life from juvenile to adult likely measured somewhere around 10.5 meters, roughly 34 feet. But some of the more aggressive published estimates push that ceiling as high as 24.3 meters, nearly 80 feet, for the largest individuals that may have existed. Nobody's settled on one single number, and that uncertainty is worth sitting with rather than smoothing over. What isn't in dispute is the weaponry. Estimates put Megalodon's bite force somewhere between 108,500 and 182,200 newtons, a unit of force, among the strongest bites any predator in the history of this planet is believed to have produced. The teeth behind that bite weren't built for finesse either. Thick and heavily serrated, lined with tiny saw-like edges, built for one purpose: grabbing hold of enormous prey and breaking straight through bone.
There's a shark of unimaginable proportions just under this boat.
That's the animal at the center of this story. For millions of years, it ruled its ocean without a serious rival in sight. What actually happened when it hunted is where this gets genuinely brutal. How Megalodon actually hunted. Ruling an ocean means nothing without a way to actually feed on it, and Megalodon's approach to feeding was blunt and direct rather than clever. Its primary targets were whales, seals, and sea turtles, and we don't have to guess at that. Direct fossil evidence proves it. Megalodon tooth marks, deep and unmistakable, embedded straight into ancient whalebone, preserved for millions of years exactly where the bite landed. How it actually delivered that bite marks a real difference from the shark most people already know. A modern great white typically goes for the softer underside of its prey, working around the vital organs rather than through them. But Megalodon took a more direct approach, believed to have attacked straight through the chest cavity itself, aiming to puncture the heart and lungs immediately rather than working around them at all. Even within its own species, life didn't look the same at every age. Juveniles kept to warmer coastal waters, sticking to fish and smaller whales they could actually manage. But adults pushed further out into the open ocean, going after the largest prey available once they'd grown into the size and strength to actually take it down. Put all of that together, and Megalodon wasn't just a large predator passing through one stretch of coastline. Its fossils turn up across the globe, a genuinely cosmopolitan distribution, meaning wherever this animal swam, it reshaped the entire food web underneath it. That's how Megalodon hunted, and for millions of years, that was more than enough to keep it at the very top. What nobody expected is that its own body was quietly working against it the entire time, and the science behind that discovery is stranger than anything a predator like this should have had to deal with. The hidden advantage. For a long time, scientists assumed Megalodon worked the same way most fish do, its body temperature simply matching whatever water it happened to be swimming through. But a 2023 study proved that assumption wrong. Researchers led by Michael Griffiths, a scientist at William Patterson University, turned to a genuinely clever method to test it. They analyzed isotopes, specific chemical variants of the same element, locked inside Megalodon's own teeth, using two techniques called clumped isotope thermometry and phosphate oxygen isotope thermometry. Both are ways of reading temperature history directly out of ancient minerals, long after the animal that grew them is gone. What they found was that Megalodon ran roughly 13 degrees Fahrenheit, about 7 degrees Celsius, warmer than the seawater surrounding it. That makes it mesothermic, partially warm-blooded rather than fully cold-blooded like most fish. Only one animal alive today shares a similar temperature difference, the whale shark, though for an entirely different reason. The whale shark is a gentle filter feeder, drifting through plankton. Megalodon reached that same body heat by doing the opposite, hunting down prey that fought back, one violent kill at a time. That extra body heat wasn't just a curiosity. It let Megalodon swim faster and push into colder waters, chasing blubber-rich whales carrying thick layers of fat, into places purely cold-blooded predators simply couldn't follow. But that same study uncovered the trade-off sitting right behind that advantage. Keeping a body that warm at that size demanded an enormous, constant supply of calories just to maintain the heat alone, and nothing else. Remember that detail, because it's going to matter again later, once this story turns to how Megalodon's reign actually came to an end. That was the fuel behind the animal. What it never had was anything worth calling competition. Why Megalodon had no true predator? For roughly 13 million years, a fully grown Megalodon simply didn't have to look over its shoulder. Nothing in its ocean posed a serious, confirmed threat to an adult of the species. Sit with that fact for a second, because it's not a small claim. 13 million years is longer than most predator lineages in Earth's history managed to survive at all, let alone rule unchallenged the entire time. This was an animal built to swim faster than its prey and hunt in waters most competitors couldn't even reach. By every measure that usually determines who sits at the top of an ecosystem, Megalodon has already won. And that's exactly what should make the next part of this story feel wrong. Because Megalodon wasn't actually the only giant swimming these waters. Somewhere in that same stretch of ocean, during that same era, moved something else entirely. an animal that didn't need to outswim or outbite Megalodon to become a genuine problem for it. It just needed to want the exact same thing Megalodon wanted. The only real rival. Its name is Livyatan melvillei, and it's worth saying clearly from the start. This is not a speculative creature dreamed up for a documentary. It's a real, scientifically described fossil species, built from actual bones dug out of actual rock. And once you picture what those bones belonged to, it's easy to see why this animal changes the whole story. Something in the same size class as Megalodon itself, roughly 50 to 60 feet long, is a giant raptorial sperm whale, an ancient hunting relative of the sperm whales alive today. The resemblance to its modern descendants mostly ends at the name, though. Livyatan came armed with functional interlocking teeth reaching up to 14 inches long, among the largest teeth of any known predator to have ever lived, on land or in water. That detail matters more than it might seem, because modern sperm whales don't actually hunt this way at all. They've lost their functional upper teeth entirely, relying instead on suction feeding to pull squid into their mouths in total darkness, thousands of feet down. Livyatan is what that same family line looked like before any of that softened. It carried a full set of massive, interlocking teeth on both jaws, built specifically for one purpose: seizing large prey and refusing to let go. This wasn't a filter feeder drifting through plankton. It wasn't a scavenger picking at carcasses either. This was an active, apex-level predator, hunting the exact same waters, going after the exact same animals Megalodon had already claimed as its own. For the first time in 13 million years, Megalodon wasn't alone at the top. What actually happened when these two animals crossed paths is where the honest version of this story gets a lot more interesting than the version most people have heard. What actually happened when they competed. Here's where this story earns its honesty rather than its excitement. There is no fossil evidence of direct physical combat between Megalodon and Livyatan. No confirmed bite marks from one species have ever turned up on the other's remains. That's worth stating plainly before going any further, because the temptation to imagine some prehistoric showdown between these two is obvious. Two of the largest predators ever to exist, sharing the same ocean at the same time. It sounds like it should end in a fight. The fossil record simply doesn't back that story up. What the fossil record does support is something quieter, and honestly, more interesting once you sit with it. Both species hunted the same whale populations across the same Miocene oceans at the same time. That's real, documented ecological competition. Two apex predators drawing from a single, limited food source, rather than two monsters squaring off against each other directly. Think about what that actually meant out in the water. Every whale Megalodon caught was one less meal left for Livyatan. Every whale Livyatan claimed was one Megalodon never got the chance to find first. They were rivals in the truest sense of the word, competing without ever necessarily meeting. That's the real version of this story, and it's a stranger, more scientifically honest one than any staged battle could be. Two of the most formidable predators life on Earth has ever produced, locked in a slow, quiet contest over survival, decided not by teeth clashing against teeth, but by which one could outhunt the other for the exact same prey. And they weren't even the only two names in that contest either. The other competitors, Megalodon and Livyatan, weren't hunting in an empty ocean, and it's worth being honest about that too, even if the evidence here is thinner and less settled than everything covered so far. Other macroraptorial sperm whales, other large, actively hunting members of Livyatan's broader family, swam alongside it during this same period, filling similar predatory roles across different stretches of the Miocene Ocean. There were early ancestral killer whales in these waters too, part of the genus Orcanus, the same lineage modern orcas belong to today, but their role here is genuinely murkier. Some early species, like Orcinus cetoniensis, appear to have been built for hunting small fish and squid, not large marine mammals, which means it's far from certain they were ever real competitors to Megalodon at all. That uncertainty deserves to stay uncertain, rather than getting smoothed over into a bigger, tidier story than the fossils actually support. This wasn't a crowded battlefield packed with equally matched giants. As far as the evidence currently shows, it was mostly a two-way contest, with a handful of other species living around the edges of it, in ways scientists are still working to fully understand. What ended this contest, though, had almost nothing to do with teeth at all. How it all ended. Megalodon's extinction, dated to roughly 3.6 million years ago, wasn't caused by a single dramatic event. It was the slow result of several problems arriving at once. That earlier trade-off finally caught up with it. The elevated body temperature Megalodon carried had always come at a cost, and maintaining that heat demanded an enormous, constant supply of calories, which meant this was an animal that could only ever be as strong as its next meal. Supply was going to hit Megalodon harder than almost anything else in the ocean. That disruption arrived from several directions at once. Global ocean cooling, tied to the onset of the ice ages, shrank the warm coastal waters Megalodon depended on, especially the nursery areas where its young actually grew up. At the same time, baleen whales, the broad group of filter-feeding whales that includes species like blue whales and humpbacks today, declined in diversity, and the ones that remained shifted their range toward colder polar waters, pulling Megalodon's primary food source further and further out of reach. On top of all that, the formation of the Isthmus of Panama, the land bridge that eventually connected North and South America, reshaped global ocean currents, adding yet another disruption to a system already under strain. Competition added its own pressure too, not just from Livyatan, but from smaller, faster, more efficient predators like the emerging great white shark, animals that needed far less food to survive and could adapt more easily as conditions kept shifting. And here's the detail worth being fair about. Livyatan itself didn't outlast Megalodon by any meaningful stretch. Both giants were being squeezed by the exact same shrinking food supply at the exact same time. Neither one beat the other. The ocean simply stopped being able to feed either of them. That's how the reign of two of the most powerful predators in Earth's history actually came to an end. Not in a fight, but in a world that quietly stopped being able to support animals built on this scale. Why Megalodon couldn't be hiding today? Given everything covered so far, it's worth addressing the question that always comes up eventually anyway. Could Megalodon still be out there, somewhere in the deep ocean, undiscovered? Two real experts have already answered that directly. Stephen Godfrey, curator of paleontology at the Calvert Marine Museum, and Nick Pyenson, curator of fossil marine mammals at the Smithsonian, both point to the same basic problem with the idea. Megalodon's prey, whales and dolphins, are air-breathing mammals, meaning they have to surface regularly, which means they can't spend their lives hidden away in deep ocean trenches. And if Megalodon's prey couldn't survive down there, Megalodon itself couldn't have followed them into hiding either. Pyenson put it about as plainly as a scientist ever puts anything. If Megalodon still existed, he said, we would know it. And the best way we'd know it is we'd find whales that were bitten in half. That single line does more to dismantle the modern myth of a surviving Megalodon, quietly lurking somewhere in a place like the Mariana Trench, than any amount of technical argument could. The whole premise falls apart the moment you remember that Megalodon's food had to breathe air, the same way ours does. Megalodon isn't hiding anywhere. What actually happened to it is a stranger, more complete story than the one where it simply vanished into the deep. And now you know exactly how it really ends. For 13 million years, Megalodon ruled its ocean without a true predator, and history remembers it as the fear no one could match. But one animal did match it, hunting the same waters for the same prey. Livyatan melvillei never needed to defeat Megalodon in battle. It just had to make sure the ocean could never feed them both.